Waitangi Day is about the, I guess, the celebration of the Indigenous people of Tangata Whenua and the relationship of those who came later. So particularly this year in New Zealand Aotearoa, there's been a lot of debate and challenge politically about the place of Indigenous peoples of Aotearoa and what it looks like. And there's been a lot of political debate that's been quite divisive. So this Waitangi Day has really probably more important than a lot in the past because it is about reminding of the unique relationship and the partnership that was intended by our ancestors and the settlers who arrived, later.
And what extra added significance will it have, and will you and your party be, I suppose, displaying tomorrow?
And I think what we are doing is assuring the love that our ancestors had for everyone that came to Aotearoa, the intention to be able to preserve the rights that we had pre-colonisation, and most significantly acknowledging those that arrived here wanted to have a better life. They wanted to look after everyone. And so tomorrow will be about reminding what it is that we do collectively, our responsibility and obligation to each other. And, I know that there's a lot of noise. David Seymour Act, the Atlas agenda here is quite rife. But actually that's a minority view. We've seen within the hearings these are proposed legislation going on to diminish the significance of Te Tiriti and the significance of the rights that we had as Māori before colonisation. So I think what we're seeing actually more is the a real collective effort to maintain the uniqueness of being here in Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Yes, as you've alluded, this treaty principles bill will be voted down by the majority of Parliament. But is there a further cause for concern?
Yeah, there is. I think if I could sort of explain it for the Australian audience, is Te Tiriti or Waitangi is not only a significant part of recognising the rights and interests that we had as Indigenous peoples prior to colonisation and the Crown's relationship, it also benefits all of New Zealanders because it's a critical part of being able to stop corporate exploitation. And that's a large part of the government's agenda at the moment. So, and it's not anti-progress, it's just making sure that we leave something for our future generations. And that's something that all of New Zealanders are concerned about.
And what do you make of the Prime Minister Christopher Luxon's absence from today's annual gathering of political leaders at the Waitangi Treaty grounds?
I mean, every year there's invites, and I think it's up to every minister, politician, including the Prime Minister, to accept those invites. I acknowledge that Ngāi Tahu have put a large iwi in the South Island have invited him to be with them. The reality is he has allowed his government, as part of becoming the Prime Minister, to trade off the rights and interests of Māori. He has himself said that this is the worst relationship that a Prime Minister has ever had with Māori, so he should have fronted. And even if he wasn't wanted, he agreed to this divisive legislation to come to the House to spend millions of dollars when, New Zealand's going through a real tough time. There's a real cost of living crisis. People are struggling, people are being laid off work. And so I think he should have fronted and explained to those, and also, taken the heat. David Seymour turned up today and it's his bill, and he took a lot of heat. The Prime Minister is the person that's, allowed it to happen. It wasn't a bottom line for ACT Party, so he allowed the division to happen.
Look, in this vein, there were also concerns raised about social divisions in New Zealand. Has that been evident from what you've observed over the past few months in New Zealand?
Yeah, I think there is an extreme amount of social division. I mean, I think New Zealand is becoming real, prime for the plucking of the 2% who own more than 50% of the wealth of New Zealand. And I think that in itself has created a real extreme of elitism. We are seeing, the privilege getting, and the rich getting richer, and those ordinary, New Zealanders, those including Māori, really struggling to be able to afford to live here. And not only that, nowhere else are we Māori. We have a lot of Māori live in Australia, but they connect to us here at home, and nowhere else are we considered as tangata whenua, as Indigenous people. So the social stress, the cohesion stresses, the taking away the rights to be Māori, to even speak our reo, have been really, really tough. It's been a really cruel government. And I think what we see in the Waitangi celebrations is just as many non-Māori as Māori. We've got Pākehā communities, large Asian communities, large Pacifica communities who don't want to see this type of politics. It's Trumpism, and we don't want to see that type of polarised politicking. So we're fighting really strong and pushing back about the right to be who we are, the right for everyone to be treated equally, the right to address the inequities that tangata whenua experience. Most significantly, nowhere else are we, Indigenous Māori, but here.
And I'd finally like to ask you, what's the message that you want to put out to New Zealanders on Waitangi Day tomorrow?
Yeah, our ancestors saw, as the settlers were arriving in the first wave, that they had come with lots of hope and aspirations. The problem was they'd arrived and there was no law. Māori have had tikanga and tribal cultural laws for thousands of years. So you only do that, and there was no conquest in Aotearoa. We never ceded sovereignty. There was a real desire to live in harmony. And whether you're a settler that arrived 200 years ago or a settler that arrives yesterday, the same obligation is for us as Māori to look after those who arrive here, for those who arrive here to embrace the culture, the Indigenous peoples. And it was a really beautiful vision. Nowhere else in the world do you see a tiriti like we had, because you've got to remember the context. We were the last of the nations to be colonised. So my message for tomorrow is, and for Waitangi Day and every Waitangi Day, is to hold on to the very fabric of Aotearoa and make sure that we look after each other, ignore the divisive politics, and leave no one behind. We can stay focused on our values as a nation. We're going to be okay. We'll ride through this okay.
Okay, Debbie Ngarewa-Packer, thank you so much for your time today and for speaking with us.
Anytime. Kia ora.